This is the last time we'll ever have to get onto a Carnival ship again.
We can turn this ship around. We can turn this ship around all the way back home.
The last time we sailed on Carnival Cruise Line was right after cruising opened back up in November of 2021.
And I'll be honest, quite frankly, it wasn't a very positive experience. We enjoyed it, but when we got off that cruise, we pretty much said we probably wouldn't be sailing Carnival again.
So fast forward to almost 5 years later, we decided this year to do 4 side-by-side cruises out of Miami. And the only way to make this work logistically was to book another Carnival sailing, this time aboard one of their newest and largest ships in the fleet, the Carnival Celebration.
And going in, we had concerns, big ones, whether it be crowds, passenger behavior, pretty much all those things you've probably seen on other YouTube videos.
And the real question was, would we regret this decision?
Hi, I'm Jan.
And I'm Tracy, and we recently completed a 7-day Eastern Caribbean cruise aboard the Carnival Celebration.
Now, we believe that cruising is a personal experience, and we also understand that two people, even on the very same cruise, can have completely different impressions.
So this video is just our observations of our 1-week sailing on Carnival in the Eastern Caribbean.
So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through a few specific categories, and then we're going to talk about the 3 things we really loved about the Carnival Celebration and the 3 things we thought that Carnival could have done a little bit better.
So the categories that we're going to be covering are going to be the embarkation, the ship, our cabin, service, food, and the entertainment.
So let's start with the embarkation because, quite frankly, this was a nightmare.
So we had arrived early to the terminal because we had just walked off of the Celebrity Beyond and from the Royal Caribbean Terminal. And we fully expected that we would have to wait for a while to be called on board.
And that was fine, but we understood that. But unfortunately, instead of being called by individual groups, all of a sudden they just called for everyone to start boarding, which created the complete cluster of everyone trying to get into line.
And the process was chaotic. But once we actually started moving, it did go quickly. And from the time we were standing in line, we were on board within 23 minutes, which actually wasn't too bad.
Yeah, of course, this also included having to be searched by dogs, which is the first time in over 40 cruises that has ever happened to us boarding a cruise ship. And it kind of reinforced our fears of going on another Carnival cruise.
Once on board, our room wasn't ready, so we thought we would go get some food up at Guy's Burger or the Blue Iguana, but the lines were absolutely unreal. Tons of people, and again, it was just total chaos.
So we finally gave up and we moved down to the Tropical bar to sit, have a drink, and wait till our room was ready, which is when I turned to Tracy and I said, "Congratulations, Tracy. This is the last time we'll ever have to get onto a Carnival ship again." I was done before the cruise had even begun.
But what was even worse was we had to do a pre-COVID style in-person muster drill.
And since COVID, quite frankly, the only times we've had to do an in-person muster was actually on expedition ships, and that was not the Carnival Celebration.
But there we were at 2 p.m. We were directed to go up to the main dining room, and we had to sit there for about 45 minutes, and we didn't have a lot of instruction. So crew members came by several times, they were scanning our cards, and all you really heard over the loudspeakers before the muster drill was all the do's and don'ts that they were playing.
There was no announcement. It was over. We're sitting there, and eventually we just noticed people getting up and leaving, so we did the same, and we went to go unpack in our room.
So yes, the embarkation and muster were a complete bust, but we were glad we decided that to not walk off the ship right then because the rest of the cruise really was a stark contrast.
Yeah, quite frankly, and that contrast really begins with the ship itself. First of all, the Carnival Celebration is the second one of Carnival's Excel class ships, along with the Mardi Gras and the Jubilee. Overall, we really loved the layout. It was intuitive. It's a big ship, but it really doesn't feel hard to be able to navigate from one portion of the ship to the other.
And we loved how many places there were to relax. So areas like the Summer Landing neighborhood with its Heroes Tribute Lounge really gave people places to spread out.
And that's really the surprising portion of this entire cruise. Despite the chaos of embarkation and the fact that we were actually sailing at over double capacity, and I think we had 5,630 people on board, once the cruise began, even on the sea days, especially on the sea days, the ship really never felt super crowded.
Now, certainly there were places that got busy, such as a pool area, but while the pool area was congested, there were so many loungers that you could find. You could actually find a lounger within eyesight of the pool.
Yeah, plus what we really loved was the Serenity area on this ship, which is Carnival's adults-only pool area. Even on a sea day, we could find day beds in the shade that were empty.
Taking a walk to the buffet at noon hour during sea days, we had our pick of tables, including some that were by the windows.
That extends to the bars as well. We never had a problem finding a seat before dinner to get a drink at any of the bars, whether that be Latitudes, which we loved, or the Golden Jubilee. In fact, we found that the Golden Jubilee bar was actually usually only about half full whenever we went there before dinner.
So it was absolutely a great surprise from what we had anticipated this cruise to be like. However, the place that did feel cramped when we were there was in the elevators. They were so small that if you had more than 4 people in there, it seemed really, really tight.
Now, I think we figured out why we had this experience. Tracey and I are probably like 50% of the guests on board, where when we come out of a show at 10 o'clock, we're looking at our watches and going, okay, time to go to bed, while the other half of the ship is just getting started.
And they'll be sleeping in until noon or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, which allowed us to enjoy the other parts of the ship.
Now, we'll also note that we never saw any of the bad behavior that gets Carnival in so much bad press on YouTube. Yes, the dog search during embarkation was a surprise, and we saw security regularly present in all the venues, but combined with not being a short 3 or 4 day cruise, it really was a cruise of people just having a great time together.
And another surprise we had was in our room. So on our first Carnival cruise, we did opt for an aft cabin, but our room did kind of remind us of a cheap Motel 6. On this cruise, however, the Celebration we were on, we really enjoyed the aft cabin. And although it did overlook the pool rather than offering the full wake view, it was a really nice room.
Yeah, it's really new, and the ship is new, and that really showed. The furnishings were in great shape. The room felt bright. The balcony had a shade that we could actually enjoy being outside during the day, and we even had plenty of outlets, which is always a win.
And on the balcony, we had a lounger, 2 chairs, and a table. The only thing we would have liked was probably a little bit bigger of a shower, but overall, we thought that the cabin was comfortable, and we love the daily towel animals.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, our room steward was excellent. We were surprised that our room steward actually provided the normal morning cleaning, as well as he came in and did turn down service. We actually were expecting the morning cleaning, so this was a very nice surprise.
So service elsewhere on the ship, though, was more of a mixed bag. So, for example, our main dining room wait team was good on some nights and inconsistent on others. Specialty dining, we went to Fahrenheit 555. It was disappointing from a service standpoint, while the casual dining venues I thought were really fast and efficient.
We also noted that the bar service, especially in the Golden Jubilee Lounge, was often very slow, even when it wasn't crowded.
And another area that we were hesitant about in this cruise was the food. So we found it on this cruise to be, again, a mix of pleasantly surprising and pretty average. We did have a few good meals in the main dining room, but most dinners were just okay.
Now, Fahrenheit 555 really didn't live up to our expectations. Of course, we live in Texas, so it's really hard to impress me with steak. However, Cucina El Capitano and Shebang really both were very good.
And the brunch at sea in the main dining room we thought was excellent. We were kind of expecting the usual minute steak that we ordered when we had our steak and eggs. Instead, we received a thick steak, perfectly cooked, and arguably as good as anything we've received in many cruise steakhouses.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, the big culinary star for the Carnival Celebration was the complimentary casual dining options. Guys Burgers, Blue Iguana, Pig and Anchor. I'm missing, Shack's Big Chicken. We just kept going on back because it really was that good. Honestly, the casual food was so strong, we actually never made it to the buffet.
And there was no shortage of things to do on the ship. There was live music playing throughout the day. They had trivia games. They had a really busy casino and a nightlife that went late, even if we didn't.
Yeah. Now, while we didn't take it in the show at the Grand Spectrum Theater, and we believe that it was largely a game, Family Feud games shows that were there, we did watch their Celestial Strings in the Celebration Central performance area. It was really an interesting use of both strings and contemporary music set against a vivid use of LED screens. It was a really good show. Other nights, Celebration Central has other entertainment, mostly the games like Deal or No Deal.
And another entertaining day was our day at Carnival's new private resort area, the Celebration Key. We were there about 2 months after its grand opening, and I'll tell you, we were really, really impressed.
Now, the resort is divided between an adult area on the left and a family area on the right as you're coming off of the ship, and with each have basically the same setup of pools, food, and lounge areas. There also was plenty of free loungers with umbrellas. There was a massive freshwater lagoon and complimentary food options, so you can grab a bite on shore.
Now, you could also pay extra for villas or day beds, but with so much included, we just didn't think it was necessary.
All right, so far what we've done, we've given you our impressions of the embarkation, our ship, our aft cabin, the service, the food, and the entertainment.
And now we're going to give you the 3 things that we liked best about the cruise on Carnival Celebration, and those 3 things that we wish they would have done a little bit better.
But what we're going to do is we're going to start with the 3 downs, and the first of these is the in-person muster drill. Now, it is possible that Carnival had to do a full person in muster due to maybe a Coast Guard inspection, but it was needlessly long and confusing, and really was a horrible way to begin a cruise.
And our second down on this cruise was a main dining room dinner food. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't memorable either. Presentation and quality were inconsistent, consistent, and nothing really stood out as something we looked forward to ordering over.
Yeah, and our third down of this cruise was the slow bar service. It was actually lagged in several different venues, but we noticed this most in the Golden Jubilee Lounge. Even when it wasn't busy, and like I said, most of the time when we were there, it's about half full. The drinks took a long time unless you walked up the bar and then flagged down the bartender. And even when you did that, it was slow. And also, the tables often would just sit there with drinks, old drinks and everything, and just weren't cleared very often.
But now we get to tell you the three things that we loved most. And our first up on there that we never thought we were going to say about a Carnival cruise was the lack of these horrible crowds. Yes, there were places that did get crowded, generally around the pool, but once we got past the embarkation day, it really was a comfortable cruise.
Now, if you watch our channel often, you'll know that I love a good hamburger, which leads us to the second up of this cruise, which was the casual dining. Not only were the hamburgers at Guy's Burgers fantastic, but all the casual dining was really excellent. And what really impressed us is all this casual dining was completely complimentary.
And our third big up on this cruise was our aft cabin. It was a huge improvement over the last one we sailed on Carnival. It was bright and it was comfortable, and it was a place that we genuinely enjoyed spending our time in.
Yeah, overall, this cruise really was a huge, pleasant surprise. Now, it's not a cruise for those who are wanting a quiet luxury vacation, but we really think that Carnival Celebration is a great value, especially for families and multi-generational groups.
There's a lot included and plenty to do day and night, and Celebration Key adds real value without forcing you to spend extra.
All right, so now watch this video to check out one of our other adventures, and as always, keep on traveling.
We